Welcome to another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast here from the Snowdon Deli. I'm Aaron Rand from CJD along with Bill Brownstein of the Montreal Gazette. And today, our pre-election podcast has Anthony Housefather and Neil Oberman, who are running against each other in Mount Royal. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Good to be here.
Listen, first of all, it's great to have you both together here. That's not something we often get to do, so thank you for making the time.
Yeah.
Neil, let me begin with sort of a little background for people watching. This riding is considered, at least it has been up until now, to be maybe one of the safest Liberal ridings in the entire country. It's been Liberal since the get-go, so my first question to you would be, what's your biggest challenge here?
Well, you know, a lot of things used to be, and a lot of things are no longer. And we all have challenges in life, and I'm on a journey with a lot of folks to bring change. It's an amazing journey because you learn so much about people in your community, people in different parts of the riding. I don't ascribe to what we can't do. I ascribe to what is possible. And I have a motto, which I like to use, which is your voice, your vote, your choice, and change. And that's what I'm running on. I'm not running on a campaign of negativity. There is negativity around us, and I don't accept it. But we, as a community of people, and that's Côte-Saint-Luc, Hampstead, part of Côte-Neige, and TMR, I think people are ready for change. And look, I'm no politician, Aaron. I'm just a regular guy. I'm a citizen. Oh, there's the good stuff now. Okay. I'm just a regular guy. Oh, now that you touched it, you gotta eat it. I'm a regular guy.
Problem.
Oh, it's not a problem. I'm a regular guy, and I feel that we could do better. It's not an affront to Mr. Housefather. It's not a referendum on Mr. Housefather. It's a referendum on the Liberal Party of Canada. And I want to be positive and say to all your viewers, this is what democracy is. You stand up, you be heard, you be seen. You know, if everybody were to just sit down and say it is what it is, then nobody would get better. And what I want to do is bring change. That's what I want to do.
Anthony, the last time you were here, you were in the midst of an existential crisis because at that point you weren't sure about your party, certainly not with their position vis-a-vis Bill 96 and so on and so forth. And the Conservatives were actually courting you, and you had a decision to make what to do: become independent, go somewhere else, or stick with the Liberals. Are you content to where you are right now, and how do you explain your situation at this point in time and your feelings about the party as you move forward?
Oh, I'm very excited about the party and about Mark Carney, our leader. I think what happened last year was I had always felt the Conservatives were way too far to the right and that Justin Trudeau had moved the Liberal Party too far to the left, and I wanted to be part of a centrist party. I wanted to have my values reflected in the party platform. And Mark Carney and the leadership change have brought centrism to the Liberal Party. I'm very, very comfortable with where we are right now. I'm very comfortable with Mark Carney's position on Bill 96, that we're challenging Bill 96 before the courts. It's very reflective of my position that this law takes away rights from my community, right? Law 96 that says that government services are only available to people who have access to English schools in English means that tens of thousands of people in the Mount Royal riding are deprived of access to government services in their language. And I will always stand against Bill 96, and I will always fight for the rights of my constituents, whether on language or other issues. So I believe that whether it comes to the Canada-U.S. relationship, whether it comes to economics, the Liberal Party is definitely properly placed right now, and I feel very comfortable there. And the other thing that I did want to say is that I think that last year I actually ended up getting exactly what I wanted, which is that I was able to publicly express my frustrations. I was able to achieve the change that I wanted to have, and come out on the other side where now we're going into an election and I see people across this riding are excited about the Liberal Party. They're excited about Mark Carney, and they're excited to have somebody like me who they know is their voice and always will be their voice on minority rights.
All right. If I could just say, Mr. Carney said that should this come to the higher Supreme Court, that he will step in because of the notwithstanding clause. On the other hand, Mr. Poilievre says that basically he's not going to get into the middle of all of this. Yeah. What is your feeling on this?
Okay, so, there's a couple of issues there. On the issue of language, it's an issue in part of the writing. So let's be clear. It's not an issue in the entire writing, right, but it's an issue for people who believe, and I believe as well, minorities have rights. Minority rights is not only language rights, it's also cultural rights, religious rights. It's a fundamental difference in how we see the operation of government. I understand that Law 96, for me personally, I don't agree with it. That's me. I'm an attorney, by the way. But the law is law. There's a rule of law, and there's a mechanism by which you challenge the law through the court system. Right now, there's a constitutional argument going on in the lower courts, as you know. You may not know, but our law firm is handling it on behalf of the city of Hampstead. So I must tell you where I personally stand. Mr. Poilievre and the Conservative Party have a position, and they're entitled to have the position. The question is, how do you see government operational in this matter? Should we be investing our money in doing references? By the way, it could have been referred a long time ago by the Liberal Party to the Supreme Court. It wasn't done. So take a step back. What about C-13, which I'm sure is going to come out? Put on the table, put on the floor by the Liberal government, which Mr. Housefather was the only person to stand up against it, despite it's his party. Language rights are key, but here's another key right that nobody seems to talk about. When you're not safe and you're not secure, you're not going to stay here in the province of Quebec. Why? Because you don't see a future, and therefore language won't have much of an issue for you. A lot of young people today, they don't feel that there's a place for them here in Quebec, and it's not because of the language. It's because they can't go to their universities, they can't go to their synagogues, they can't do things because of the hate that is rampant throughout our city, rampant throughout our country. And when you're not safe and you're not secure, staying here, you won't have to worry about speaking French or English because you're probably going to move. And by the way, economically, they don't see a future. So while we always like to focus on Bill 96, and by the way, a lot of people are bilingual these days, it doesn't address the more fundamental hierarchy of rights, and that's the right to be safe and secure in your country, in your communities at all times.
Anthony?
Yeah, I want to step in on that one because I've been there for 30 years. I was there at the founding of Pro-Montreal and Youth Employment Services to give young people in our communities the chance to stay in Quebec. I was there through Bill 178, the 1995 referendum, the demerger wars. I've been there at every battle our community has fought, and one of the principal battles we fought is to ensure that the Quebec government doesn't override our rights. And what has happened with Bill 21 and Bill 96 is the Quebec government is using the notwithstanding clause preemptively to override our rights. I saw that Neil was on a French language show this week saying he supported Bill 21.
I do.
And saying that, which is using the notwithstanding clause to fundamentally override religious rights to wear personal kippas, hijabs, turbans, and work for the government. Bill 96 is much more than whether we speak both languages. I speak both languages, but I want my government services in English. This year I fought, along with many other Liberal MPs, to get the federal government to intervene when Quebec was trying to adopt a directive that would block healthcare services from being provided to English-speaking people if they didn't have access to English schools. And we successfully got the Quebec government to override that directive. And when it comes to Bill 96 and Bill C-13, I think Neil is failing to mention that when we were debating these bills in Parliament, I don't sit on that committee. I went to that committee every meeting. I got my party to accept my amendments to remove the references to Bill 96 from the bill. The Conservatives in the bloc voted against that, and so did the NDP, which is why they stayed. But what he's also omitting to say is the Conservatives at the committee brought amendments requested by the Quebec government to essentially apply Quebec's law federally. They brought dozens of amendments to take away rights from our community. The language critic, Joel Godin, on the committee repeatedly said that the only language threatened in Canada was French, and the English-speaking community in Quebec was not threatened whatsoever. And the Conservative position on this is drastically different from the Liberals. And I cannot imagine Mount Royal wanting to elect someone that supports Bill 21 and says that Bill 96 is totally fine. Like, Neil, if you think Bill 21 is fine, do you want to apply it federally? Do you think that the federal government should also adopt Law 21 to say the RCMP officers can't wear the hijabs and the turbans and the kippas in the same way the Montreal police cannot now?
Yeah.
Like, that's
so
very scary.
Unfortunately, a false and antiquated narrative.
But let me stop for a second.
No,
you said you
I'd like to
support
finish
Bill 21, and you said yes.
Yes, I do, of course. And I'll tell you why. All of this is complete, with all due respect. This is why this city and this province and this community are overwhelmingly rejecting false narratives of antiquated concepts. You folks need to have what I call a good morning welcome, and that is the following. Today here in our country and in our province, people cannot feed themselves. People cannot get health care. People cannot get a home. And what we're doing here is we're simply saying, okay, we're going to hold everybody hostage to what you consider to be the primary issue. I've spoken to more people in this community. They want to talk about why their kids can't go to university. And you know what? Language rarely comes up. It only comes up because it's the only thing that holds you to some sort of position in the community. The reality is, and it's clear, our world is changing, our province is changing. Bill 21, when I go get my driver's license, I don't want to be bothered with anything but efficiency and effectiveness in getting it. I don't want to worry that that person doesn't like me for whatever reason and gives me a bad vibe. Gentlemen, this is not going to be a debate that you're going to win. You can win it with yourselves, but you're not going to win it with the people. Nobody's going to stay here with what's going on. What is the federal government doing to help minorities from the rampant amount of anti-Semitism going on around us? Nothing. Where is the government when students are crying to get into their classes? Nowhere. It's not me, it's him, it's not him, it's her. Bubble legislation, BS. Here's the bottom line, and here's what I'm going to leave you with. Today is not yesterday. We're going to make a change in this country. It's going to be great, and it's not because of Neil Oberman. It's because we're going to take back our rights, take back the responsibility of government, and stop going back in time to try to make us sound like we're some small, insignificant community. Language, I agree with you. It's important. I respect minorities. English people have rights. You know it and I know it. But unfortunately today there is a bigger issue. And that is this country is broken. It needs to be fixed. And with all due respect to Mr. Housefather and his party, this is not the pathway. We will find the pathway, and it will be with proper government in Ottawa.
Okay, look, I want to stop. I know you want to counter what he said. I did want to mention one thing. There's an old expression that all politics is local, right? This is a federal election. You're running a riding. You've both been on the trail. You've both been, I'm sure, knocking on doors and talking to people. I'd like to know, you mentioned what you hear about from people is not language, but the other issues you mentioned, safety, security, anti-Semitism,
prosperity.
Whatever. Let's start with Neil. You've been knocking on doors. What do you hear from your constituents?
I think the very first thing that my constituents are concerned about is this false narrative that Canada is broken. There's a lot of problems that Canada faces, but the Canada is broken is reflective of a Trumpism. It's reflective of a defeatist, negative kind of attitude that the Conservatives, I thought, had largely abandoned this campaign because they had seen how much people are now cleaving to a national identity. One of the things that I've always believed is that we live in the best country in the world, and we have to be darn proud of it. That's why I fought for Canada over and over again in my life against Quebec separatists since I've been an adult. And I think that people are very scared about Trump. That's what I hear at the doors, that they want to have somebody stable, not a mini Trump, to stand up to Trump. We need to impose counter tariffs. We need to make our economy stronger in the sense we need to get rid of interprovincial trade barriers. We need to make sure that we can build things domestically. We need to expand our trade markets. We have free trade agreements with almost every country in the world that is in the G7. We need to make sure that we are able to not ship more than 70% of our goods to the United States and receive more than 60% of our imports from the United States. So to me, the number one issue I've heard at doors has been who can deal with the U.S. relationship. I used to be the general counsel and chief administrative officer of a U.S.-based multinational. I have the U.S. business relationships. I have been the vice chair of the International Task Force on Online Anti-Semitism. I am the vice chair of the Canada-U.S. Friendship Groups. I have my contacts in Congress. I will be there to help the government deal with the United States. So to me, that is one issue. Another issue is the cabinet extension.
But
Comes up all
Neil,
the time.
you're saying you're not hearing anything about Trumpism
I'm not saying
whatsoever,
that,
which I
but
find sort of surprising.
No, I didn't say that. I said primarily what I'm hearing is the issue of safety, security. Now, it's always I, me. Okay, with all due respect, you haven't been in the business world for at least 22 years because you've been in politics.
Sorry, that is a lie. That is a lie.
So are you working while you're in Parliament?
I was elected.
I'm not going to debate the gentleman here.
No, but PJ and I haven't been in the business world.
Have a debate.
I have not been in the business world for 25 years.
Gentlemen, we're not having a debate.
Well, I should
we're
be able
asking
to
questions.
finish
But he made a comment that it is a lie.
Something I think he should have a right to answer.
Yeah, but I should finish my comment first because
Okay.
we're not going to
Finish
have a
your
debate. If we asked for a debate, but you don't want to have one. But having a debate with a smoked meat sandwich, chopped liver, and danishes is not what the constituents of Mount Royal want. I live in this world. I am a person. 2025 is the year of the people, not the politician, and we reject the fact that you've been there for 22. My friend, you'll find out on April 28th, 25 who we are. And I can tell you, we don't want politicians. We want answers, we want effectiveness, and we want efficiency. Being highly effective and being inefficient is not a skill set that we need today. I reject it. There's nothing you're going to tell me that's going to change anything. With all due respect, we're tired. We're tired of being abused. We're tired of being overtaxed. And we're tired of hearing no answers. We want change. Your voice, your vote, your choice, change. And if you have been in business for 22 years, you would know that business people here suffer tremendously by what's going on. And that is why today I'm here to tell you respectfully, it's time for a change. And if you don't like it, I understand and I respect it, but smoked meat and knishes and Danish won't help feed our children, protect our children, put people in the right place so that they'll stay here and be prosperous and safe, period.
The Corner Booth podcast is brought to you in part by the Snowdon Delicatessen, where we are. 75 years in business, the home of Montreal's greatest smoked meat, plus Carnotzel, potato latkes, and the famous Snowdon Deli party sandwiches. That's the Snowdon Delicatessen.
That's my position.
Neil, I think one thing we should mention here is, as a lawyer, you have been like when you talk. But in terms of legal work, what you've done in terms of.
He's also done quite a bit of work.
No, I know, but like you successfully created.
I took legal action because government didn't act. What level of government is
you
it?
have injunctions.
I didn't have to do anything. We had. See, this is the narrative I like to change.
But
the community had to take action on March the 4th, 2024, because government failed to act. Now, who is that government? We can have a debate about it. But we had to take something unprecedented, which is take an injunction to stop haters from attacking our community center,
You're suggesting that's a federal issue?
Here's the narrative where it's wrong. The statute is called the Criminal Code. It's federal. It's enforced by the local police. But leadership starts from the top and trickles down. So when the government of Canada says, for example, most recently, our new prime minister, Israel, turn the lights on. There's a genocide there. Mixed messaging, unacceptable, because what it does, it creates a problem. I want to also say something. A bunch of people in Ottawa run around, they enforce it with the Emergency Measures Act. They freeze their bank accounts, they put them in jail. Whether they're right or wrong, I'm not here to discuss it. For 18 months, people run across our country, block our students from going to school, can't get into the metro, block businesses. Okay. What has the government done? Nothing, and nothing.
Okay, Anthony,
they do nothing.
How do you respond to this?
How can you respond to something that's so clear?
Let him respond.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, there was quite a long rant. I
reject the word rant.
Okay, well let him rant.
Not in court.
I didn't say objection. I said reject.
I mean, that went on for quite a long time. There were so many things that were said. So let me start.
So when we have a debate and we can just get it all out of the way with.
I think this is perhaps the reason that, I don't know that this debate is actually a debate. You're continuing to rant. So first of all, you said that I haven't been in business in 25 years. I only left the business world in 2015 when I left Dialogic. I was at a multinational technology company that operates in 65 countries, traded on NASDAQ, and I was one of the 4 senior officers of the company. We created jobs across the world, created hundreds of jobs here in Quebec. I actually know how to meet a payroll. I actually know how to create jobs. I actually understand how a business works. I understand how a business fails and how difficult times are sometimes and how you rebound from that. I actually was in the business world, which I don't think you have ever been, Neil. I do understand business, and I do understand the business people I meet with in the riding, small businesses, large businesses, all the time. When it comes to what you said about anti-Semitism, yes, anti-Semitism is a huge issue for the Jewish community in my riding, and I don't think there's been any member of parliament from any party that has worked harder on the anti-Semitism file over the last year. We got $65 million in funding for the Security Infrastructure Program to protect buildings across the country. We just announced yesterday bubble legislation, which I think is highly effective and I've been advocating for a year, to create a new intimidation offense to block people from blocking access to community buildings. We banned Samadoun and the Houthis, calling them terrorist organizations. I worked for that. I was the one last year that went off on my own to try to negotiate with Universities Canada for safer campuses and got the universities at least to make some concessions, such as saying that they would not have encampments on their universities be tolerated this year. I'm the one that got the Justice Committee last year, not the Conservatives, me, to study anti-Semitism, focusing on college campuses, even though that is provincial jurisdiction. And we came out with a unanimous committee report last December, except for the bloc dissenting on jurisdictional grounds. And this March, we held a national forum on anti-Semitism, bringing together the provincial government, the municipal government, the federal government, police, and universities. And the federal government made multiple commitments. So when you say we've done nothing, the large part here is the two areas of greatest frustration are municipal police not dealing adequately with the demonstrations and enforcing the criminal code, and college campuses. Neither of those are in federal
We
jurisdiction.
defund the universities. We stop
Neither of
giving them
those.
funds?
Neither of those are in federal. Neither of those are.
Me. What about us? What about our story? What about our rights? Forget about what you say. Let's talk about effectiveness and efficiency. Let me tell you something, sir. There are people who call me every day and tell me bad stories about how they can't send their kids to school. So I'm going to tell you what I reject. I reject a weak government in Ottawa that has a immigration system that lets people here on student visas that go out and block our streets, harass our children, and I reject it. You think you have the experience? The people will decide. But I will tell you this, from 2015 to today, that's a decade. And by the way, I do run a business and we employ lots of people. It's called a law firm. And yes, I work in the real world. And in the real world, guess what? People want answers and solutions. They don't want we, me. Look, bottom line is this, you've worked hard and I applaud you. And it's not a referendum on Anthony Housefather. And this is what you fail to understand. I don't have any problem with you. I have a problem with a liberal government that's wrecked our country. How did they wreck our country? They busted through the budget. They can't even respect the basic guidelines on things. And then you want to talk about while we're sitting here having a smoked meat sandwich and people literally every day call me, sir, and tell me bad things. And what do I tell them? I'm just one person, one citizen, just trying to do better. And I know you're trying to do better. And I want to be clear, for the record, I'm proud of you, but I'm telling you, Anthony, respectfully, it's time for a change. We need different people to do different things. That's how society grows. It doesn't grow by keeping stagnation in place.
Neil, you're sounding like you're giving a stump speech here.
You can call what you want, Aaron. It's reality. You invited me, so I'm here.
I asked a question of what you're hearing when you go door to door with your citizens.
I told you.
You talked about U.S. and Trump. You're hearing primarily what?
I'm hearing a lot of things. How about the price of goods? When people say to me, I either am going to buy good food to put on my table or I'm going to think about not putting gas in my car. In that part of the riding over there in Côte-Neige, people hold two jobs. It's sad. You knock on their door and they look so tired. And I say, how many jobs do you have? We have two. Every Filipino that I've met has two jobs. And by the way, they don't all have cars, but some of them do. So the food issue is an issue because inflation is bad. It's at 2.9% and rising. Salaries, they're not growing as fast as they need to be able to afford. And a lot of people can't probably afford to have this meal right here. So I hear about that. Do I hear about Mr. Trump? Of course I do. I don't want to be silly and say I don't. But in the context of where we are right now, people are scared, Aaron. They're scared for their futures. I'm not saying you created the problem, Mr. Housefather. I'm saying his government did. And when he wanted to cross the floor, it meant that he was interested in doing something. Had he crossed the floor, you wouldn't have invited me here. I would have been standing next to this gentleman who I have respect for, but he didn't. So I'm standing up. Don't blame me. I'm very saddened at where we are today.
He didn't cross the floor. How do you respond? I mean, are you happy? Like we asked you at the beginning.
Of course. I mean, again, I'm not a conservative. I don't agree with defunding the CBC, but somehow protecting Radio-Canada, which is absolutely impossible. I don't agree with Trumpism, and I think a lot of what you're hearing here is everything's broken and not recognizing that most of politics is gray. It's not black and white. When you go to Ottawa and you want to be effective, and I think I've been a highly effective legislator, you need to be able to work across party lines. You need to be respectful. You need to be engaging. You can't be insulting. You can't be loud. You can't be shouting at everybody. And I don't think that's the way to go. When you come to issues, yes, of course, there are problems out there. And sometimes governments make mistakes. But I am proud of the dental care program that Neil didn't refer to, which I hear about all the time from my Filipino community, my Bangladeshi community, who are now able to get dental care if they're earning less than $90,000 a year. I'm proud of the child care that we've created nationally. There's a lot of things that I'm proud of. I think you can be fiscally responsible, as I always said, and Mr. Carney has said we won't run these deficits. Mr. Carney is promising a tax break for the first $50,000, $7,000 you earn, so you'll save $425 per individual on the first $57,000. But we have to recognize that there's a lot of things this government has done really well, and I think now this new Liberal Party will be the best party to deliver results over the next 4 years.
Let me bring something up. Because you talked about Filipino, you talked about Bangladeshi. My understanding is this is one of the most racially diverse communities in the entire province, maybe in the country. You're not hearing the same thing from every door you knock on, are you? I mean, what are you hearing? What communities have specific issues?
That's true. It's first of all, and that's the great thing about Mount Royal, and that's I want to say on a positive basis, the journey is great because you see people that maybe you don't normally interact with, and you've had the great luxury of meeting so many folks, and it's enriching. And you're right. So, like I said, so when you knock on the door of a Filipino family, sometimes they're a little reluctant to open up because whatever. You go there and they say, I have 2 jobs, and I have a kid, and I'm worried about how am I going to pay for things. I mean, people are always concerned about how they're going to pay for things. So, for example, when I knock on a door that is a multicultural door, so for example, Hindu folks, they're worried also about some of the things that affect Jewish people because there's also hate against Hindus. And it's sad, and it really is sad. But government is there to protect people, right? That's their primary function in my humble view. And if people don't feel protected, whether they are or not, the apprehension causes the instability amongst us. The Liberal Party is fundamentally the same party as it was without Mr. Trudeau. They just replaced the head of it, but everybody there is the same. So I don't see how intellectually we can simply say by changing one person, the whole party has changed. Again, I want to be respectful. It's not against Mr. Housefather, but the reality is people here are demanding change to better their lives.
Let me just suggest one thing here, Neil. Polling suggests, and I know Conservatives don't necessarily believe in some of the polls that have come out, but without doubt, the way we are seeing things right now, when it comes to leadership, I mean, it seems like
the doors don't always reflect, and I've said it.
No, but like Mr. Carney, a lot of people believe he's the more capable leader to deal with matters not only with Trump.
You're right. They may say that, but if you look at the record,
and Mr. Poilievre does not have that same.
The record is clear. You have a gentleman who doesn't live here, doesn't work here, has his investments elsewhere. While he might have run the Bank of Canada and ran the Bank of England, he doesn't run the country of Canada in a way that will be satisfactory to Canadians. He just got plopped into the position after being anointed through his party after they removed other candidates. And the reality is Mr. Housefather supported Mrs. Freeland. She got 47 votes in the Mount Royal riding. 47 votes. So your power now what has happened here, respectfully, is you back Mrs. Freeland, who we don't hear of. She's already wrecked our economy by busting the budget.
Okay,
you backed her, and now after having pushed her as the candidate for the prime ministership, now we don't have another seat because you've been on mute for the last 9.5 years.
Neil, let me just say, why are Canadians rallying around Mr. Carney?
But that's what you say.
If you look at the numbers,
go to a rally that is involved with the Conservative Party and Mr. Poilievre, they're packed. You go to a rally with Mr. Carney, and people are yelling, Israel's committing genocide. And he's like, yes, okay, and let's do the arms embargoes there.
Let's clarify that statement.
No, that's not clarifying any statement. It's his words. He owns it.
It's not his
words. Don't matter.
Someone yelled it from the audience.
Words don't matter. Words matter.
He didn't hear
I didn't hear it, but he said arms embargo. Right, he heard an arms. He said that's why we have an arms embargo. That is the problem. And words do matter.
Hold on. Did he actually say Israel is committing genocide? Someone screamed in the audience that.
When you say that's why we have an arms embargo, it supports the position. This is the redrafting of a narrative that we're not going to get out of. I'm not suggesting anything. There's a record. It says what it says. Let's not rewrite history. Let's accept that this gentleman will not support the Jewish community, will not support Israel, will not do anything to make sure.
Sure, by all means.
At this point, I'm trying to be polite, but this is becoming ridiculous. I'm very sorry. This is not actually any discussion. This is one person completely dominating the conversation and yelling and screaming. Mr. Carney clearly, unequivocally yesterday said that he did not say that Israel was committing genocide. He said it the day after, he didn't hear, and then yesterday he made it even clearer that he was not suggesting that. He would never politicize that word. So again, we're jumping from one thing to another. When it comes to this entire issue, we have brought people out of poverty with the Canada Child Benefit. When I go to the doors in the riding and I talk to these same families, they're doing much better than they otherwise would because of the programs we've created, the daycare, the child benefit, dental care. And I don't hear the same kind of negativity that Neil is hearing. this is actually in Mount Royal a discussion about who is best able to represent the riding of Mount Royal. People have 30 years of experience with me. They know what I stand for. They know what I can do. People who live in Côte-Saint-Luc see the aquatic center that was built while me and my council were there. They know about VCOP that defends us in Côte-Saint-Luc because me and my council created it. There are all kinds of things everywhere in the riding that show what I can do. Cavendish, which is a huge issue for people in the riding. For 30 years, I fought for the Cavendish extension. I know all of the different plans that were agreed to and then reneged on by the city of Montreal. We need to get Cavendish actually built, and we need the next Montreal administration, because Plante has just reneged, to actually do it, because that will allow the industrial park in TMR, it will allow the development of the Hippodrome. That is a huge issue that I hear all the time, the lack of housing. People are having trouble affording the place that they live, and they need more housing. The Hippodrome is a great place to do a development, but for that you need a road network, and for that you need Cavendish. Those are kind of things that I'm hearing at the door. And again, I don't have the same reaction that Mr. Oberman does to what people are saying. I don't think everybody believes Canada is broken. I think most of my constituents believe Canada is a great country, that they're a happy part of it, and they think governments can always do better, but I don't think they have that same negativity.
I want to ask one last question. We're going to have to wrap it up. To something that Neil has said, and other people, I've heard this from callers, for example, to my show. This idea, and you mentioned, is, you know what? People say, yes, we got rid of Justin Trudeau, but the animal reigns the same. There's just a different head on it. So people say that to you. For all intents and purposes, the party remains the same. People in this cabinet are pretty much the same people who were in the last government. What do you tell them when they bring that up?
I honestly don't hear it that often, but I think that what I would say is there'll be a new cabinet after the election. We'll see what will happen. I think that Mr. Carney cut the cabinet considerably, and I think that there was a continuity because it was close to an election. What I think is the Liberal Party has great people. We have a great team. I've been part of that team for a long time, and I respect the colleagues that I'm there with. I believe that they are a really good group of people. I think the new candidates we have are good, and I think that Mr. Carney brings a whole fresh light to leadership in this country. And I think, given the fragile economic state of Canada, the need to redevelop our economy based on the threat of the United States, somebody who has a doctorate in economics, somebody who's been the head of a central bank, has the better ability to do that than somebody who has not held a job outside of Parliament. So I'm happy with Mr. Carney.
What about the Hamas wing of the Liberal Party that has consistently voted against everything related to the safety and security of our community? Why is it that $100 million of our hard-earned money went to
Neil,
people who
we can't
really
say there's
shouldn't
a
have it?
Hamas wing.
You don't think so?
You
Well,
can't.
it is right. So now it is of course.
It is so.
You don't like what I say? Well, okay, I
But it's
understand.
like you're making accusations.
It is
there.
so incredible. You
Yes.
stood next to your leader
Yeah.
when he said that I supported.
say that.
Yes, he did. You stood there next to your leader, laughing and clapping when he said that voting for me was a vote for Hamas.
We're in a parliamentary system under the Westminster process. When you vote for a person, you're not in the right place. Sorry.
So
it seemed that you're a little bit unhinged by this, but the reality is does not like it.
I'll let everybody listen to the tape. I'll let
I'm sure
everybody
they'll be
listen.
happy to.
I'll let everybody listen.
Hold on. Bill, go ahead. Let's wrap it up.
Let's wrap it. Neil, you were brought in. Mr. Poilievre reached out to you directly to run. I believe he came to a big rally.
I reached out
You
to him.
reached out to
You know
him.
why? Because I believe strongly that
Okay.
we could do better
But
in
let
this
me-
country, and we need new leadership.
Yes,
and new
okay, but
effectiveness.
Neil, let me ask you a question here. So you had a big rally at the Siegel Center. I believe Mr. Poilievre introduced
It was at the
Y,
yeah,
but Siegel.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Nonetheless, what are your plans? Like, should you win? Of course, you're going to be in politics.
Right.
Should you? Will you continue on the political trail? Should you not?
Great
win the
question, and
election?
thank you for that question. I'm in this particular process, not for politics, not for money, but for survival. And I'm a survivalist, sir. And I and a lot of people are going to have changed our optics on how we're going to do business in this country, protect our young people, make sure we're prosperous. I appreciate Mr. Housefather's hard work. It's really hard being a politician. I can see it. But I do strongly believe that this is a great exchange. I appreciate the time, and I thank you.
Will you
for all-
continue, though? I'm
Absolutely,
asking.
yes, sir.
All right, that's
Yes.
going to wrap
Thank
up.
you.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Anthony Housefather
Thank
and
you
Neil
for
Oberman.
coming.
Thank you so
I wish
much.
you both the best
Yes.
of luck.
Happy Passover to all, both of you.
Passover. We'll see you again soon on another edition of the Corner Booth Podcast.
Thank you so much.